Welcome to the week 22 power rankings. And at this point, we're starting to get into the home stretch of the season. And I think it's time to have the discussion. Although I hate the foul baiting and the flopping and the ref begging nature of Joel Embiid, I have him as my MVP ahead of Nikola Jokic. At some point, defense has to be worth something in professional basketball. Every single season, we pull further and further away from what basketball used to be. Nowadays, threes are the only shots that people take. High-flying offenses, shots with 2 seconds into the shot clock, 176 to 179 score games. But the MVP, the most valuable player in the NBA, has to play some defense, man. And I'm okay with Nikola Jokic winning his other 2 MVPs. By definition, he was the most valuable player single-handedly carrying the team to the playoffs when he was the most valuable player to his team in the league. But seeing him get cooked by guys like Jakob Poeltl and how Michael, don't call him Mike Malone, schemes up an entire defense built around Jokic's inability to defend on the perimeter, where they leave a wide open shooter open every single time they pull out Joker, has to account for something, man. So long story short, Joel Embiid is my MVP right now. Obviously, that could change as this season progresses, but just the way he's been carrying the team and putting up ridiculous numbers and seeing Jokic get cooked by lesser centers, it's just problematic, man. Anyway, let's actually get into the power rankings of this power rankings video, starting at number 30 with the tank for Victor Wembanyama tier, also known as the Vic for Victory tier. And we have the Pistons here making a new arrival. They're officially the worst team in the league, the worst record. They just continue to lose every single game ever. And it's fine. They're tanking. They don't have Cade. They're sitting Jalen Duren. I think he's been injured. Jaden Ivey. They're just really losing at this point, and it's fine by me. Now, I am watching players on their team individually. One guy I'm watching is Isaiah Livers. Not very good. The other guy I'm watching, though, is James Wiseman, because he's been a point of interest. And so I watched a stretch of James Wiseman plays where he grabbed about 6 rebounds, got called for 2 consecutive offensive 3 in the keys, missed 2 putbacks, and then got fouled when Damian Lillard ran into his outstretched arm and got a superstar call. I don't know what to do with all that. But my conclusion of James Wiseman right now is that he's bad at basketball. He's got so much potential that it would be stupid not to see him develop. He's just this freaky athlete, a volume scorer at the center position, but right now he's late on rotations, out of position, drops way too far on pick and roll drop coverage, takes horrible angles where he tries to post up and call for the ball to where the guy can't pass him it. He sits in the paint for too long. Every single possession, it feels like he's eligible to be called for 3 seconds in the key, and he sets the worst screens I've ever seen in the history of basketball. But he just has so much high-end potential. If he stays a little bit healthy and the Pistons development team can continue to bring him along, maybe in 5 years or so, James Wiseman could be a stud. Just something to think about as we talk about the Pistons. Going up, next up is the San Antonio Spurs at 17 and 50, and I have them behind the Rockets because they've just been really uncompetitive. Jeremy Sohan has been in and out with injuries or load management or tanking, whatever you want to call it. So they're playing guys like Charles Bassey and Josh Richardson. Is he still on the team? I don't think so. He's gone. Guys like Blake Wesley, just really, really raw players, and just seeing who they have at this point because they're trying to tank for Victor Wembanyama. Let's be completely honest, the Spurs season has been over since day 1. At 28, surprisingly, is the Houston Rockets climbing up, and they look, dare I say, competitive. Kevin Porter Jr. has come back from injury, and he's been pretty much their best player, not their highest potential player, not their most efficient player, but he is their best player right now, and he's playing pretty good basketball. They're actually trying. Jabari Smith is playing well, and now that Rockets fans have stopped saying he's a bust, it's been fun to watch Rockets basketball for the last few games, which is surprising. They've won a couple games against the Spurs. They've been in close competitive games. Jalen Green has looked hit and miss. Tari Eason, though, is playing tough, and they're not just completely centered around Alperen Şengün trying to create offense and hoping that his inefficient shot creation works. And it's you know, hats off to the Rockets. I hope Steven Silas doesn't do this thing that he did last year where they look a little bit competitive down the stretch, work their way out of great seeding for the upcoming draft, and then the Rockets say, oh, we actually improved at the end of the season, so we're not going to fire Steven Silas. That would be horrible. Next up at 27 is the Hornets. Going to be in their own tier because they're not part of the tanking squad. They're trying to win. They're just not doing a very good job at it. And of course, with LaMelo Ball gone for the season, it's going to be a pretty rough stretch of games. It's just with LaMelo Ball, they still lose, but they lose by 5. And without him, they lose by 20. It's really unfun. Nothing about it is good in Hornets basketball to watch. And I also have the Magic here as well because they struggle to reach that 30 win mark. They play competitive games. They beat the Heat, right, in overtime. They have some talent. It just needs to come together. I'm not sure if their head coach is the guy, who's it, Jamal Mosley. It kind of seems like they're still a little bit behind on developing when you see a team like the Pacers who exceed their expectations with probably a similar level of talent. Obviously, the Magic are younger, but I feel like there's enough players on the Magic squad to go on a late playoff play-in push. I'm not opposed to them getting a good draft pick again this year, seeing if they can build a team around Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero, and whoever comes out of this year's draft. But it's just been kind of a funny year for the Orlando Magic. And that is the end of the Hornets tier, where the Magic are actually in the tier with the Hornets, I know. And now we got to start breaking up the tiers into these weird lists because the NBA is just weird right now. So we're going to talk about the teams with 31 wins, okay? Let's start with the Blazers and talk about Rip City. This team is an embarrassment right now. When Damian Lillard is playing, they're bad. When he's not playing, they're horrible. And I think it's time to say, all right, we tried it with first-time head coach Chauncey Billups. He looks the part. He just doesn't quite play the part as well. Their defense is absolutely horrible. Yusuf Nurkic has been out for a while with injury. They're trading away guys that they could really use to help win now. They need to pick a hole and decide what direction they want to go. Rebuild or retool or compete. They're trying to split the baby in half, you know, do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it's just not working, as you can see. Next up is the Washington Wizards, going to fall down a couple spots as well, just on a losing streak. They win some, they lose some. They play really inefficient basketball. They don't give the ball to Kristaps Porzingis enough. I think we talked about the Wizards enough at this point where I just don't want to watch Wizards basketball anymore. Next up is the Indiana Pacers, and you know what? Screw it. I'm saying it right now. Tyrese Haliburton can be a bona fide number 2 on a championship team. I'm starting to put him up into the 90 overall club. If you're talking about 2K ratings, this dude is a stud. He's putting up ridiculous stats right now. He put up like a 40 and 19 game, I think, last night. It was just nuts how good Tyrese Haliburton is, how transformative he makes this Pacers team. Without him, they're a bottom 5 team. With him, they're a top 5 team. It is ridiculous. And if they get a couple more stars, Ben Mathurin is out with injury right now, but pair him with, so Tyrese, Ben Mathurin, Buddy Hield can stay, Miles Turner can stay, and then pick up one more superstar wing player like Brandon Miller if he's not in jail. This team could be legit. Next up is the Chicago Bulls, and they are jumping up 2 spots because there's so many teams in this 31 win tier. But the fact that they had to eke out a somewhat lucky win against the Houston Rockets tells you how bad this season is going for the Chicago Bulls. Lonzo Ball likely done for the season, possibly for his career. Just the way that injury is starting to shape up with his knees. He's just injury riddled, cannot stay healthy for a full season. And the rest of the team is not that good. The bench is not that good. Chicago's in for a rough couple of months. And that is the end of the tier of the 31 win teams. Now we have the WTF is the NBA tier. And I'm going to separate the WTF is the NBA tier into teams that are over 500 and teams that are under 500. Okay? So we'll start with the sub 500 teams, which is the Pelicans, who actually picked up a win last night. So good for them. But other than that, they've just been really bad. Willie Green has been a little frustrating to watch. The entire team is underperforming because they don't have their guys. Brandon Ingram is out with whatever at this point. Zion looks like he's going to be gone for the season. And when you don't have your superstars, plural, you're not going to be a good basketball team. I don't care how competitive Jose Alvarado and Herb Jones play on the court. Next is the Toronto Raptors. And the Raptors are really getting what they deserve here. You don't decide to tank and trade away Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet, well, then you're going to be here. You don't decide to go all in and trade away all your future assets for a superstar that's available like DeJounte Murray or Rudy Gobert, then you're going to be stuck here in the play-in tournament. This is the product you get. A mediocre, hoping for the play-in, not a good draft pick, not a competitive championship team, Toronto Raptors 2023 squad. The only guy that they have on their team that is good, that has the potential to be a superstar, is Scotty Barnes, top 5 pick 2 years ago. So the only way to win in the NBA is to have these superstars, man. And the Raptors are trying to do it with a bunch of kind of good players, and this is what's going to happen. Next up is the Oklahoma City Thunder, still trying to figure out if they want to make the playoffs or if they want to tank. When Shai Gilgeous-Alexander plays, he puts up like 35 points a night for them, and they win basketball games. When he doesn't, they struggle. Jalen Williams still looking incredible. Josh Giddey still trying to figure out ways to impact the game. They need a center, and they traded away Mike Muscala. Hopefully next year when Chet Holmgren comes back, they'll be legitimately competitive. Right now, they're just looking to get valuable playoff experience. And that is the end of the sub 500 WTFEC NBA tier. Now we're in the actual teams that are 500 because there are 3 teams that are 500 at this point. And I'll start with the first one, who's actually not 500, ironically. The Brooklyn Nets. I'm bumping up 3 spots. They're just playing good, man. Mikal Bridges is looking like Kevin Durant mini out there. And I don't know what happened between the transition from Phoenix Suns Mikal Bridges to Brooklyn Nets Mikal Bridges, but they were giving him a few touches out there in Phoenix, and now Brooklyn said, you're going to be the number 1, number 2 option alongside Spencer Dinwiddie. Go get a bucket. And he has been money, dropping ridiculous stat lines since the day he stepped on the court. He's still a lockdown defender. He's playing with so much joy. I guess the best way to say it is that he has been unlocked and unleashed on the NBA, and Mikal Bridges is looking like he might be a number 1, number 2 option for a legitimate playoff team. Next up is the Dallas Mavericks, who are falling down 6 spots, and I know Luka Doncic is hurt. I have no idea what this means for the season. All the scans and the MRIs say there's no tears, there's no long-term pain, it's just discomfort. And you never know what's in a guy's heart. I'm sure him being fat and overweight for the entirety of the season didn't help. And of course, Kyrie Irving coming over, he's going to sit as usual, not playing on back-to-back nights, going to sit out a couple games here and there. Hindsight 2020, I probably wouldn't do this Kyrie Irving trade again. I'd try to look in a different direction. Maybe first thing I would do is not completely alienate Christian Wood, and maybe figuring out a way to get Kevin Durant on the Mavericks instead of Kyrie Irving. That would be a trade that I'd definitely look into, but you know, you got to live with what you've done. And right now the Mavericks are a 500 team, which is kind of unfortunate seeing as they were in the Western Conference Finals last season. Next up is the Atlanta Hawks, looking pretty good with Quinn Snyder as the head coach. Are they going to be a competitive team in the playoffs? Maybe. That magical run that they went in the Eastern Conference Finals a few years ago feels like that magic, but they do have a lot of the same pieces still. Sadiq Bey looks like he's going to be a good piece for them as well, just making buckets from the 3-point line. Trae Young playing with a little bit of swagger. He's even playing defense these days. So the Hawks, I mean, they're right here, 15th, 34-34. We'll see how they close out the season. And we have the Minnesota Timberwolves falling down a couple spots as well, also 34-34. I thought they'd turn the corner. I thought they were going to win some games, be competitive. This NBA is completely wide open on the Western Conference, and I was thinking that the Timberwolves could be one of those teams that makes a move. I know they still don't have Karl Anthony Towns, and I still don't think he's even going to come back for the regular season. But they just find ways to disappoint you, man. This Timberwolves squad is tough to root for. Anthony Edwards looks like he's going to be that dude, and then he takes 4 contested step back threes and airballs them in a row. And you go, why are you not driving to the paint every single possession like Ja Morant, or taking your mid-range jumper that's money? No, he loves the step back threes, and it's inefficient basketball. They don't have much depth. Rudy Gobert is not a great offensive player, obviously, and they got to rely on a guy like Kyle Anderson to shot create a little too much. So the Timberwolves, a little frustrating, falling down 2 spots, and that is the end of the teams that are 500. Now we have the WTF is the NBA for teams that are over 500, starting with the team that isn't over 500 in the Los Angeles Lakers, and they just look pretty good, man. I told you after the trade deadline, I was a big buyer of Lakers stock, and even after the LeBron injury, I still think they'll hold steady at about 500. We're in a really weird NBA right now, without superstar teams, without overwhelming favorites. There's a lot of teams that are struggling with injuries, and they're awfully constructed teams like the Lakers were pre-deadline. And you look at a team like the Sacramento Kings, you put together a competent team with pieces that fit, get a little injury luck, and play hard, you can go a long way this season. Right now, the Lakers have a good squad. Once LeBron, if LeBron comes back from injury, they're going to be legitimate threats in whoever they face into the playoffs. Coming at the number 12 spot is the Miami Heat, jumping up a spot. They've been fine. The offense is still horrible. Jimmy Butler is still incredibly clutch, and they lost to the Magic. Not great. Next up is the Golden State Warriors, and it's really as simple as this. The Warriors will go as far as Steph Curry carries them, because Jordan Poole has not been great. Andrew Wiggins is still out with whatever's going on with his family. Klay Thompson has been hit and miss. Ty Jerome gets too many minutes. Thankfully, Anthony Lamb no longer has any games left on his 2-way deal, so he has to either get signed or cut. Thank the heavens there's no more Anthony Lamb minutes. Jonathan Kuminga's in a walking boot. This team is in tatters right now, but Steph Curry is so transcendent. He will just win them games. He'll shoot lights out from 3. He's their entire offense. Not much more to say about the Warriors. You already see who they are, and they're just in a really bad spot right now. But like I said, the West is wide open. At number 10 is the Los Angeles Clippers, and I'm going to give them a 5-spot boost. They're starting to win games. They're starting to come together. Kawhi Leonard is playing basketball. Paul George is solid. I'm starting to believe a little bit 3 games over 500. And once it becomes the playoffs, Ty Lue turns into a transcendent head coach. So we'll see where this Clipper squad goes, because they could theoretically beat any of the teams. The Suns without KD, the Grizzlies without Ja Morant, the Nuggets without defense. I feel like the Clippers have the best shot out of any team in the West, with all those question marks, to actually come out and actually represent the West in the championship. Just my 2 cents. Of course, they have to find some semblance of consistency before the season ends. We got 1 month left. Come on, Clippers. And that's going to be the end of the WTF is the NBA tier because we have the good but not great tier. All these teams are playing really good basketball. Theoretically, they could go on a run, but you never know in today's NBA, starting with the Grizzlies and Ja Morant. Who knows when he's going to come back? I don't know what to say. If he's back, they're a good team. If he's not, they're a okay team. Maybe a tick over 500 with their depth and Taylor Jenkins as a coach, but they're not going to win any championships without Ja Morant playing in a right state of mind, healthy. All of it right now, their season hinges on Ja Morant. Got the Suns falling down 3 spots as well because, man, it seems like Kevin Durant is now in the latest of the pool of brittle superstars. This will probably hit the Suns championship odds pretty hard if the report is that he won't be able to come back until sometime in the playoffs. Theoretically, could they get eliminated before Kevin Durant even comes back from injury? That's not great. They traded away Mikal Bridges, who you see is a stud. Traded away Cam Johnson, who's depth. Traded away Jay Crowder, who didn't give him any minutes, but theoretically was another wing player in their position of need because right now they're playing guys like Torrey Craig and Ish Wainwright a little too much. Next up is the Knicks, jumping up 2 spots because they have some impressive wins, but now Jalen Brunson is hurt. How long is he going to be gone for? Unsure with that foot. Next up is the Sacramento Kings, and this is what I'm saying, man. You put together a team, even it doesn't matter how good your actual superstars or stars are. I think Domantas Sabonis made the All-Star game and De'Aaron Fox didn't. Both of them are kind of in that low-tier All-Star. Sometimes they'll make it, sometimes they won't, depending on what kind of season they're having, but they just have a really good team around them. They have a system that they're playing in. Mike Brown is doing a heck of a job, and they're getting a little bit lucky with the injuries, and they're going to go a long way this season because the West is ridiculously wide open. They're 40-26. If you take those games at the beginning of the season where they got screwed over, they could be, a 43, 44 win team right now? Ridiculous. Next up is the Cleveland Cavaliers, and they kind of epitomize this good, not great season going on. Donovan Mitchell is that dude, but is he good enough to carry a team to the championship? He hasn't displayed it before. This is a very deep team. You got Darius Garland. Hopefully he's healthy. You got Jared Allen. Hopefully his eye's okay. You got Evan Mobley. He's looking like he's starting to turn the corner offensively. Got a solid team, solid depth, a pretty good coach in JB Bickerstaff. Is this the season that the Cavs break through? It'll all hinge on Donovan Mitchell being able to carry this team. Sometimes he can, sometimes he doesn't. And next up is the Denver Nuggets, who are going to fall down a spot because it's a bad time to start struggling to win games, being the number 1 seed in the West. They're probably going to lock down that number 1 seed. I don't see the Grizzlies coming. I don't see the Kings taking it away from them. They're still 6 games behind. But this stretch of games is why I've struggled with putting the Nuggets number 1 overall in the West. Their MVP is flawed on 50% of the basketball court. It's not that he won't defend, it's more that he can't defend. He tries hard, he flails his arms, he gets a lot of blocks, he gets a lot of steals. But when he's asked to guard a quicker guy on the perimeter, there's just no shot. He's a traffic cone out there. And number 2, their head coach is bad. No offense, but Michael, don't call him Mike Malone, is not that guy. The rotations he puts out is ridiculous. Jeff Green gets way too many minutes. Why doesn't he play Christian Braun? Their playmaking is horrible on the offensive end when Nikola Jokic is not on the court, and now it looks like Jamal Murray might have a knee injury as well. Just a rough stretch of games that exposed a lot of the flaws that the Nuggets had. I think they're a flawed contender. That's why I can't put them in this tier of the best teams. And unfortunately, all 3 of these teams that are the best are in the Eastern Conference, starting with the Celtics. They're jumping up a spot. I had them leapfrogging the Nuggets. I don't think that they're better than the 2 teams ahead of them. You have to give credit where credit is due. For the entirety of the season, they were the number 1 seed. And right now, the Celtics are just missing Robert Williams. They need him to get healthy. He's another guy who's one of those brittle superstars. Not a superstar, but more of a really important role player, if you will, kind of Kevon Looney caliber. The dude is their defensive anchor. When he's in, their defense takes the next step. They are an elite team on the defensive end. Their rotations are on point. You run a Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Al Horford, Robert Williams lineup. Nobody gets good shots off on that team. Without him, they got to put out guys like Luke Cornett and hope Mike Muscala is going to be good enough. Or they're stuck with Al Horford at the center position, who gets exposed on switches. Next up is the Milwaukee Bucks, and man, I want to like this team, but Chris Middleton does not look right since coming back, quote unquote, from that injury. He's just been supremely inconsistent, which you can expect from a guy who sat out the majority of the season. But now Giannis is dealing with injuries. Is he another potential brittle superstar? He's been pretty healthy for the majority of his career, and then this season he's just been in and out of the lineup. Drew Holiday is doing everything he can to carry this team alongside Brook Lopez, but you can only go as far as your superstars take you. Giannis got to stay healthy. Chris Middleton got to make shots. And at number 1, I have the Philadelphia 76ers still. Of all the teams left on the docket, I think the 76ers are the most complete team. They're going to have to overcome Doc Rivers, but Joel Embiid, MVP. Jalen McDaniels looks to be a great pickup. Tyrese Maxey just playing out of his mind offensively. James Harden doing everything he can to play winning basketball. PJ Tucker is going to give you effort. Anthony Melton gives them valuable minutes. I just think of all the teams that are left, the Philadelphia 76ers are the most complete team. They have the best player on their team, and I think that they should have the best odds to win it all, regardless of who they play in the Western or the Eastern Conference. And that is going to do it for this week's Power Rankings. Let me know what your thoughts are, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and I'll catch you in the next one.